Right, where am I tonight? Well, I'll show you. Look at all these things on the floor. Do you know what they are? People who aren't from the coast may or may not know what they are. I know it's got nothing to do with this video, but they are silverfish. Aren't they cool? Anyway, right, why am I out? Look, and I'll turn the headlamp on a little bit so you can actually see a little bit more what I'm doing. Right, I'm out kind of in the middle of nowhere. I've come to the coast because I want a little bit of reach. So my headlamp isn't really reaching out there. So there's the coast over there, right? What am I looking at? So let's have a little sit down. We'll come down here and we'll have a little sit down. Right. So if I sit down like a lazy bugger, right, so this is what we are looking at, something new from Convoy. So what is the version here? So this is the Convoy, and I'll try and get close there you go. T6, I've done this in 4K, highest quality I can get away with, 60 frames a second, HDR and all of that, 10-bit colour. So I'll try and make this as good as possible. And it is a smooth reflector. Now the thing with this is when you go on the website, there's about 14 different designs of colours you can get. This just happens to be grey, but you can see the anodization is already coming off. So these are still my early thoughts, but I've carried this for close to a week now. So I am getting used to it. I've got it set to stock settings though, because you can change that around if you click 20 times. I'm not going to cover that, I'll cover that in the review. So a smooth reflector, it's about 14 different colours and setups you can get. And I think there's about 10 different emitters. So the LED down the bottom there, the one that I picked was the SFT-25R. That's what I've gone for, because it was a nice 5000K sort of neutrally tint, and it throws quite nice. And I thought that'd be good fun, because it's a tail clicker, but you can half click it to change modes when it's on. Right, so let's have a look what this looks like. Let's turn this out. So I've got this set to standard. So if I turn this on, now this is percentage, not lumens. So it's 1200 lumens in total, and it's running on a 14500. So I hope you can hear me over the ocean there in the background. I'll use a bit of noise cancelling if I have to. Okay, so that's reaching down. Bear in mind, my foot is here. Just so you know, there's my foot there, and then the rock drops off. Just if you think, well, that's not going very far, but it drops off. I'm on like a cliff, a mini cliff here, so just bear that in mind. So first setting, you get 1%, then it goes to 10%, then 35, then 100 in these stock settings. So again, you might have to change that if you want. A little bit of greenness there, but on the screen, but in person, it certainly isn't green. So look at that, and it's still pushing out, still pushing out. There it is. There you can see it in my hand. Now we'll go to the next setting. So half press. There you go, so that's 10%. So already you can start to see the beam. I mean, the camera isn't focusing on it because it's focusing there, but look at that already. It's reaching the ocean. Look, can you see that there? Right in the middle, that flash right in the distance is a lighthouse. So that's flashing out, it's where its location is. And over to the right, if you see any flashes, there's a fisherman right on the rocks there. So I'm going to avoid dazzling him because he needs his night vision. So I'll refrain from putting it over there. So that's it on that setting. And then we'll go to the next one. Boom, so much higher. What a beam on such a small thing. 1200 max lumens. The cell was only like £3 extra or something, dirt cheap. So there's a bit of a jetty that comes out there. So let's have a look at that, and I'll slowly move it. Hopefully it'll be focusing, but again, I've done this 4K, the highest I can get away with. And then it drops off there. So if I want to stretch any further, I mean, that is reaching the water though, look, especially here. And in these pools, no problems, and on that seaweed there, and on the sand. So then if we go to the next setting, that's maximum. So there's your maximum. So look at that. Even if I mean, look how wide that is. I realise that's at distance, but you've got that nice push, but it's kind of like a nice in between. It's not too hot spotty, but it's certainly quite intense. I think that's really good for this size. I mean, I'll show you some other lights so you can compare it with. And I'll bring it all the way around here. So I'll bring it as close as well, look. So we'll go close. So again, on 100 it's very intense, so you are obscuring detail, look in the middle there. So all these silver fish, in fact there's a centipede there in the middle, you see him just to the right there? You probably won't because it'll be overexposed, but look at that. And then I'll bring the torch down because I don't want to annoy that fisherman. And then back up. So there you go, so it's reaching all the way out there for such a small light. Now let me feel this for heat. Not bad, you know, it's not bad, seeing as that's over 1000 lumens. Right, so let's calibrate that with some other lights. So what else am I testing it with tonight? Well, here's the big test. Here's the big test, in my personal opinion. This is the Lumentop GT Micro, not the Nano. This is the Micro. So again, exactly the same cell, and you're getting at least 1000 lumens on this. But look, the head is bigger. Different emitter, but the head is bigger. So let's try that. Let's turn that out, and it is ramping interface on this. So there it is on its lowest, believe it or not. You probably can't see it, but that is on its lowest, look. And then I can ramp it up. It does have turbo, very intense hotspot on that. Let's look on the wall. Yeah, you see, that's not even maximum, and that intensity in the centre is matching the T6 there. And we'll go along this wall, and then we'll go to turbo. You ready? Right, that's turbo. Look at that. A lot of throw on that. Is that better than what you've just looked at? I'd probably have to pause it and go back and have a look at that to answer that. I think it probably is slightly better throwing, but down on the floor, look, see the peripheral, it's poorer, it's better at throw, less lumens, in fact much better at throw there, looking at that, look. I'll go down to the sand, yeah, better. More intense in the middle, but then you're losing it to the side, so I wouldn't go hiking with this, it'll be less useful. So that was the lumen top, that's the GT, we'll get that in a pocket. I can see fireworks going off in the distance. You may or may not see them right in the distance there. Right, what else am I looking at? I'm also looking at, let's use some light here. There you go, that's a bit better. Cyan Sky, this is the P12R, as you can see there. Again, exactly the same cell. Now, the size of the head of this is kind of between the T6 and what we've just looked at, and you can charge it with a USB, which you can't on the Convoy, it's Type C. So let's have a look at this. So I'll get that turned on. In fact, turn the headlight out, it might help. I've got a moth going in my ear. Right, so very floody that one, even though it is set up with a smooth reflector for throw. So let's go through all the modes. That's its maximum, look. So that's interesting. It's got a smooth reflector, so you'd expect it to be an intense throw, but it isn't, look. It's quite even at this what I would call mid-range. Let's look at extreme range where it's hitting the water. It's still pretty proficient. Now bear in mind, it's more lumens than both of what we've just looked at. It's about 1200, 1300 lumens, 1400 I think, depending on which 14500 cell you pick to use. So just bear that in mind. Quite a white tint on that one. Let's check on the wall. Yeah, that's spreading way out. Let's slow that down so it's nice and easy to look at. Yeah, not as intense in the middle, or not for me, but on camera it certainly looks it. And look up at these railings, let's see what that looks like. Not bad. But again, all of these use the same cell, but the light you're getting out is so different, isn't it? Right, turn that off. There, let's get that in the pocket. So what else am I testing it with? So I thought I'd test it with, again, another light with exactly the same cell. And get the headlight on. So lumen top tool AA, this is the V2, and there's the diffuser, but I've got it on the click rather than the head, but you can put it on the head. Smooth reflector again, 650 lumens on this, so this is the lowest in the lineup. Let's get that turned on. That's its lowest there. Quite a nice beam though, isn't it? Look, and then it drops off that cliff. That's on like a lowest setting. Then we'll get higher, higher, and then I believe that to be its highest. That's very floody. So again, bear in mind, less lumens. Yeah, you're hardly reaching the sea there, are you? Look, the camera's hardly able to focus on the floor. Not as good, not as good. But better up close, I would argue, because it's less obtrusive when you're trying to look at details at higher settings. Look, on the wall there, where's the hotspot? I can't see it. See? Even if we walk towards it, look, still can't see it. There it is in my hand. I'm not cheating. Not until you get to here where it starts obscuring detail a little bit. Wow. So kind of floody, even though you wouldn't expect it to be looking at the head. That's very interesting. So that's the Tool by Lumen Top. That's the AA version. So again, that can fall back to a AA, which this one can do as well. That's just gone flying past my head there. Right, what else am I looking at? This has 700 lumens. This is the, let's have a look, the Skill Hunt E2A micro lensed here, so this should be more floody. And I think it has a warmer tint. But again, same cell, no USB charging on this one. There's its lowest. That's pretty impressive for about 700 lumens. So 50 more than what we've just looked at. Then we'll go to a higher setting, yeah, very floody. Then we'll go across. Yeah, look at that on the sand. And then the next one. So I think that's its highest. So I don't think that's going to reach the water. Let's try. Nah, not really. Sort of, but it's not really picking much up, is it? Yeah. If you want throw, this isn't what this is going to do. But up close, very floody, look. And quite a nice warm tint on that. Right, get that turned out. What else am I testing it with? Finally, I am testing it with, this is the Rider 2 RX by Ace Beam. So again, exactly the same cell, but this has a smooth reflector and it has that bolt action system there, which you look at the full review if you want to look at that. But this is a Nichia, so again, you're not getting a lot of lumens, so let's have a look at that. Right, that's its lowest. So down on the floor, it's fine. Then you go to the next one, so it's starting to stretch out a bit. Next level, right, that's its highest. Very floody. Look at the size of that hotspot, look. See that central circular section? Very wide, so I don't think that's going to go very far, but up close it's beauty. And the high CRI, colour rendering index, means that it is nice to work with and visually appealing. Don't know if you can see those bats flying in the beam there, but that's amazing. Okay, so that gives you a little calibration of this. I think this is a 519A, the Nichia LED on this one, I'm pretty sure. Right, let's go back to what we're supposed to be looking at, because I think that's important. Right, so these again are my first thoughts of the T6. I'll show you it again. There it is. There is no way to charge. You have to take the cell out, and you can get the sticker VAP cell in here, so 14500. You can put a AA in, but it's about 10 times less sort of output, so unfortunately that means you're not going to get the same level of output. So you're not going to get 1200 lumens obviously from a AA, but from the 14500 you certainly are, because it's a higher voltage. There's more juice in it, so it looks very nice. Let's show you those modes again. Turn that off. If it goes off, it's thinking about it. Right, okay, so we'll go through the modes from the lowest, and it does have memory mode, to the highest. Right, so there's the lowest. Yeah, pretty throwy that. That's its lowest. And again, this is the SFT 25-R. Sorry, SST, is it? Yes. I mean, there's so many options you can get. It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Boom, I think there's about 10 different emitters you can pick, which is great for, you know, nerds like us. And you can see in the top right of the screen there, that little speck of light is a Fishman, so I'm not going to shine it over there. This is the second mode, third mode, and turn it off. See, so it has got memory mode, and then that's its absolute maximum. So you can see the beam in the air here, if it focuses. There you go. Very, very throwy, I would say, especially on this emitter, and it is smooth reflector. I mean, it certainly hasn't got the large head bowl which you would associate with a thrower, but pretty good. And they're about 10 to 15 bucks, these. Dirt cheap. Very impressed. Anyway, right, let's walk along a bit with this. Now, if you can't hear me, it's because of the wind, but we'll put this on a low there, on its second setting, and I'll walk along with it. And we'll go through the modes, because you're probably sick of seeing this scenery here. So we'll go up here and try not to stand on all the creepy crawlies. So if I come up here, there will be a bit of wind, so apologies now, and I'll try and remove that in the post-processing. So we'll go through the modes here, and I'll rotate around. Right, that's its lowest. And that's mode 2 out of the 4. So pretty good up close. Let's go right up on that hill, look, see? And the second mode. So we're right up here, so we'll get a great view. And then that's its absolute maximum. So you can see down there, into those rock pools, perfect. That's definitely reaching the sea. The sea's pretty black this time of year, so it's not showing much or reflecting back, but that's impressive. And I can feel the heat starting to build now on the head of this device. But it is small, so you know, so I expect that to be stepped down. It's even reaching that hill in the background. You see it right over there? So that's about 150 foot away. Maybe it's 175. Very impressive. Right. If you've got any questions, stick them down below. I will get a full review up when I've carried this for at least 2 weeks. And I'm really impressed with the price so far. The threads were a bit gritty, but I'll cover that in the review. There is the 20 presses to go through all these different modes, but I'm not going to do it now because it does have battery level indicator. So anyway, right, I'm off. Good night.